Hey guys, I am pogscoop, and this will be my definitive CS2 knife tier list that I am going to make. Now, this is a new series that we're gonna start on the channel, and I will be rating knife skin, knife finishes, gloves, and even weapon skins in the future. And if you like my content so far, make sure to leave a like and thumbs up and subscribe, which will be very helpful. Now, for these knives, I want to slightly go in depth with them, basically rating them based off of their blade, animation, which includes pull out and inspect, their variety of skin, and for some, talk about the quick switching, maybe what sort of role does it fit more into, and the proportion. Now, starting off, we have the default CT&T knives. These are the default knives that you get without paying anything in CS2. These two are pretty much at the same class, although I will put one over the other, which is CT knife over the T, because CT knife has a better look. It's a very solid steel blade and the proportion is done a bit better. So that's why I'm going to put them there. Now, it's also worth noting that I won't be considering the value of these knives, of the skin prices in this case, because I just want to rank them based off how well they work in actual game. And in the future, I might even put out a tier list for budget or value for money, which is, I would say, a bit better if you're considering options when you're on a budget. Now, starting off, first knife, we have the Bayonet. I just want to say that the blade of the Bayonet is very fantastic. It has a very clean look. However, for some people, maybe like me, myself, it is a bit too thin. It is a bit too thin and small. The blade is just not comparable to M9 Bayonet. It's like the little brother of the M9 Bayonet. Animation, it does have a pull out animation that you spin in your hand, which is very, very sick. However, if you're like me, someone who likes to quick switch a lot and use the AWP, it is very hard to control because of how floaty the knife is. So if you actually want to inspect the knife finish, you'll either have to immediately spam the inspect button after pulling out the knife, or you'll just have to wait until the pull out animation is finished, which the animation is very floaty itself, and you rarely get to see sort of patterns until he finished with the pull animation, which is quite much of a downside. Now, I am a Bayonet hater, so classify me on that. Variety of skin wise, this is one of the OG knives, so it has every single skin on it. It's quite the knife of, I would say, decently well. However, it's not my thing. I am going to put it into C for now because of how floaty the animation and how weird and clunky it is to quick switch. Now, up next is the Bowie. First of all, starting with the blade is very big and bulky. It is almost like an actual sword. Definitely the way he holds it is like a very heavy sort of blade rather than being an actual knife itself. You can't really call it a knife. With the animation wise, it has a very cool and sick pull-out animation. However, the pull-out animation comes with a sound. Also, it's worth mentioning that I'll be adding sound into the consideration too. It has a special sound that it's like a metal shink voice, metal shink sound, but it's very low pitched, almost as if it is a very giant sword getting unsheathed. So that sound can be off-putting to people, especially when you consider how bulky the blade itself is. Now, the proportion on this knife is done quite well, and it has a decent animation with a pull out. He spins it around and sort of grabs it out of midair. It is very weighty, as in like you can actually feel this is an actual heavy blade when you pull it out. You have a very sick inspect animation where he flips the blade over pointing the blade towards himself and the handle outside, so that way you can inspect a lot of the great skins on this knife. However, the sound can be off-putting with people. The animation does have a also added bonus where you can spam inspect over and over again by pressing the inspect button and the reload button or the refresh button, which is R. So you can spam F and R, and just see him spinning the blade on his hand. Now, there's so many things good about this knife because it's so big. It is very, very bulky, so you can inspect a lot of the good skins on this knife, especially because it's one of the more OG ones. It has that added benefit of having every skin on it. That is definitely a plus. However, because of how bulky it is and how unclean it is to quick switch, which is something that I do a lot, I'm going to have to put it into the low C for now. Now, just to remind you that the default knives won't be considered as the tier they are, because they aren't in the consideration right now. Now, Butterfly. Butterfly, starting with the blade, fantastic handle, fantastic animation, 2 pull-out animation, and 3 inspect animation, adds so much variety that it is very hard to get bored of. It has a fantastic range of skins. It's so good for quick switching. It is so good for every single gun in the game. If you're using a pistol, Butterfly goes well with it. If you're using a rifle, Butterfly goes well with it. If you're using an AWP, yeah, the Butterfly goes well with it. Very, very well proportioned. The metal clinging sound could be hard to get used to at first. So if it's your first time trying out a Butterfly knife, it is quite hard to get used to. However, once you do, it is fantastic. Absolutely flawless after they fixed the issue in CS2 where the wrist in CSGO actually is at a very weird polygonal angle that in real life, if you were to do so, it breaks your wrist. However, that fixed the issue. That was pretty much the only issue with Butterfly back in CSGO. And they've done it, they fixed it in CS2. It is well deserving of the #1 spot in the entire game. So therefore, I'm going to put it in the top of S. Up next is Classic Knife. Now this is one of the OG knives. It is from CS 1.6. It has a fantastic blade. On the thinner end though, depending on how you like it or not. Animation is very cool. It has a pull-out animation and a special inspect animation. It has a special inspect animation on top of the regular inspect animation where he holds the knife by the tip and flip it up repeatedly to create sort of a loop. It has a nice range of skins. However, because it's one of the newer ones, it got released in 2020, it doesn't have every single skin on it. It only has some high tier, like the Slaughters and the Fade. So for that reason, I would put it into B. However, it's also worth mentioning that I put it there because it has a very good quick switching and it has a hidden idle animation that no one knows about. It is an idle animation, the only idle animation out of all knives in the game actually, where he actually pulls out his thumb. If you sit in idle with this knife out for too long, he'll do this thing where he actually grabs the spine of the blade with his 2 fingers and it makes a very nice little sound when he does it. It's very satisfying, and for that reason this knife will go into B. Now up next is the Falchion Knife. Fantastic, decent enough actually blade. Very weird looking handle, very unpractical. However, it does have a cool inspect animation. It has a pull animation just basically because it's a Falchion knife. You can flip it up. It is it has 2 inspect animation, one normal where you spin it on your hand, on the palm of your hand, And the other one, which is super sick, is where you balance it is where you balance the tip of the handle on your hand and you can walk around with it if you keep on holding the inspect button. Now, because it's one of the more OG knives, it has a lot of variety of skin. However, despite so many goods, there are downsides because the knife is very out of proportion with how big the blade is and how big the handle is. The handle is very ugly in my opinion, and it's sort of out of place for a knife like this. It is really bad for quick switching because of the sound that it makes when you pull it out. It is a delayed sound, just like the Bowie, which I haven't mentioned. It has a delayed sound where if you quick switch, you pull out the knife and you switch back to your gun, it will have a delayed sound of this very iffy door opening noise where it's like think. It's a very delayed sound, way longer than the usual pull out sound from the default knives and the bayonet, etc. It is a very annoying thing, especially when you're quick switching, because even after you quick switch, the Falchion knife's pull out sound will still be there delayed, just like the Bowie. So that is something to point out, which is sort of putting it back. However, I do know a lot of people like to play with it because you can loop the animation with spamming inspect and reset button, so you can continuously try to spin it on your hand or try to get the rare animation. And the rare animation is the sole reason it's gonna sit just above the Bowie, right below the bayonet. Now up next is the flip knife. Flip knife have a fantastic blade, a great pull animation, and a default inspect animation. It has a lot of variety of skin because of it being an older knife. It's fantastic for quick switching, fantastic for AWPing, and the proportion is done just right, where the knife blade itself and the handle is like 60-40, which is perfect proportion for how slim and how great of a knife it is. For that reason, I'm going to put it right in A. Like I said, I'm a quick switch enjoyer, and this is just one of the knives that look fantastic. Blade is amazing, great animation, great variety of skin. However, it does have a downside of having just a regular inspect animation, which is the only reason why it's sitting A and not any higher than A. Now, up next is the gut knife. Gut knife is a decent enough knife on itself. It has a good looking blade where, because of it, it's a gut knife. It's used to pull out guts when you stab something. So it has like this little hook at the end of at the bottom of the tip of the blade. It has a wooden rounded shaped handle, which could put some people off because it is looking a bit too bulky on in terms of handle wise. However, it has a sick, amazing pull animation, but with a default inspect animation. Now, there's a lot of variety of skin on it, and it does look well because of its blade being quite on the more bulky end of things. So it's good for that. It is great for quick switching because of it having a default sound, and it's pretty much quite a half decent all-rounder. Now, the only things that is putting it off from entering a higher tier is its wooden handle and the general proportion of the knife. Up next, we had the Huntsman. Now, the Huntsman is like the big brother of gut knife. It has the same animation, same pull animation, same inspect animation, same variety of skins. Very good for quick switching, just like the gut knife. Decent enough with an all-rounder. However, it just have that added benefit of a much beautiful, much fantastic blade in a much better proportion. because the gut knife's blade to handle proportion is like 1-to-1, and the Huntsman has a very, very big and distinctive blade. It's fit well with a lot of skins. It's just in general, it's just a big upgrade from gut knife. They basically share the same property, except the blade and the knife itself has a different look. And just for that one reason alone, actually, I think I'm going to bump it into A, because it fixed a lot of the flaws that gut knife have because of how good the blade is looking and how well it actually fits because the proportion is done perfectly. The only reason that is keeping it away from entering S tier, however, is the default inspect animation. In my opinion, if it's got a boring inspect animation, that's going to put it at a bit of a flaw from entering the S tier. Now up next is the Karambit. Now Karambit has a fantastic blade, fantastic handle, fantastic pull out, inspect. Despite only having one of each of the animation, it has a lot of variety of skins. It's great for quick switching, great for all occasions, and great proportional. For that reason, I'm going to put it into S. There's no telling of how well the knives are performing in terms of butterfly and karambit. All knives in S tier, I just want to mention real quick, is absolutely perfect. There are basically zero flaw with them. You can never go wrong if you pick one up, and they'll stick with you forever. Alright, up next is a new Kukri knife that they released. Kukri knives is one of those knives that is quite fitting to the CS theme. It has a fantastic blade, fantastic pull animation, and fantastic inspect animation. It does have 2 pull animation to be noted, and it's very floaty in hand, and it's great to connect right after pull out into inspect for that great look. Now it has a decent variety of skin because it is a newer knife. It is great for quick switching, great for all occasion, except it has the big flaw of being blown out of proportion. Now the actual Kukri, or the Kukri that you see in a lot of games and movies, the handle will be a lot bigger than what it is now on the CS2 Kukri knife, and the blade is also a bit more bulky. I would say even to the size of the Bowie knife, because it is just way too small of a knife and a handle on the CS2. I don't know why they did it. It just looks so funny and weird. It is totally blown out of proportion from what it could be. So for that reason, I think it's worth mentioning though, it is doing quite well on every single other aspect of the knife. It's just that the proportion issue is such a big deal that it's going to sit right in the middle of B tier. Up next, we have the M9 Bayonet. Now this is the big brother to Bayonet, and I think it has a fantastic blade, fantastic handle, fantastic pull-out, default inspect animation, huge variety of skins, very, very good for quick switching and movement. It is the best movement knife. It's worth mentioning that. When you have a M9 Bayonet, and maybe if you're playing B-Hop or Surf on CS, it is very, 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 very clean. I just want to mention that. It is great for all occasions. Very, very good proportion. Big, bulky blade fitting in perfectly with the handle. And it is just Bayonet, but done right. And the pull animation is the biggest praise that it's gonna get. It is very grounded. You start the pull animation with the blade pointing into the ground, and as you're finishing it, it will come up back into your hand, and that is very, very grounded. Now for that reason, it is going to go at the top of A. Now the only reason why it is not going in the S tier is because of the default inspect animation. And during that default inspect animation, it has a huge problem that I cannot ignore, is when you inspect the M9 bayonet, he will put his thumb over this grippy circle area. That area is where you can stick a knife to the rifle in real life. But once you see him putting his thumb there, the tip of his thumb will actually phase through the middle part here, which is very, very, very annoying when you see it. It sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's just so weird how Valve haven't fixed this yet. People have been complaining about it since CSGO. If you don't put your mind on it, you'll probably not notice it. But once you notice it, the knife itself just feels like a piece of plastic. It doesn't feel that metallic, and it doesn't feel that much of a knife. And for that sole reason, it is going to sit at the very top of A, very, very close to B, very close to S, but just not there because that one thing that Valve could have fixed. Up next is Navaja. It has a weird looking blade, ugly handle, alright pull animation, pretty default inspect animation, a sort of a good variety of skins. I think if I'm not wrong, all of the skins are on this knife. However, it is blown out of proportion. The knife is way too small. It has the smallest blade out of every single knife in the entire CS. I would argue that it has a smaller blade than Stiletto. At least Stiletto is looking sharp and clean, but this blade is not that great. However, it does have a satisfying click sound on top of the default pull-out sound that the game have to offer. That is quite cool. When you flick it out of the blade using the pull-out animation, it has this thick sound alongside with the default pull-out sound, which is quite satisfying. And for that reason, I think it will sit good into D tier. Now, it is worth mentioning that the knife itself actually have this blade part, and the skin that you get for this knife will extend onto this metallic part just below the knife, just below the blade itself, where you extend it onto the handle. So if you want to get a skin for it, it will look a slightly bit better than what it's showing now. The skin won't just be on the blade, it will also be on this metallic part. Now up next is the Nomad Knife. It has a decent blade, very solid blade where it's in one piece. Animation wise, has a cool pull-out animation and a rare pull animation where you flick the knife using your left hand, you catch it with your right. He accidentally cuts his finger because his finger's running on the edge, and he shakes his finger in tremble, and that is very sick. It has a cool default inspect animation, and a decent variety of skin because it's on the newer side. It is great for quick switching, great for all occasions. The proportion here is done very well on this knife, but it has this issue of being a bit too small. That could be off-putting for some people, but other than the smaller size and the pull animation is a bit, I would say, controversial because of how he does it with his left hand, and also he uses his left hand and right hand. The agent uses their left and right to do the animation. That could be covering a lot of the screen. It could be annoying to people, but it is quite decent, I would say. I'm going to put it into B, above the Kukri Knife, just above. Now up next we have the Paracord, and I would just like to mention Paracord, Survival, and Ursus Knife together. Now the reason why I'm putting these three together is because they have the same default pull animation and some more of a default inspect animation. These two share the same default inspect animation. This one has its own inspect animation, but I just think that this is the inferior one. Now, Paracord's blade have these cutouts on them where it's just lines along the spine, and there are dots and whole like little dot cutouts on the blade itself. The blade itself is clean, however, just like the name suggests, Paracord knife have its handle wrapped in paracords. That could be off-putting to people. These three share the same amount of variety of skins, and it is worth mentioning that although they share the same, these two share the same inspect animation, each of these knives have a rare pull animation. The rare pull animation of Paracord is where he throws the knife from left hand to the right hand, and that is just kind of lame. It is the worst out of these three. It has the thinnest blade out of these three and the weirdest looking handle out of these three. So for that reason, I am going to put it into D tier. And I would say out of these three, Survival would deserve C, and Ursus would deserve B. Let me just move it around. Actually, let's move Bowie to D. Top of D, bottom of C. Now it's also, I would like to just mention that these knives I'm putting into the tier list is just for reference and sort of like just telling you how much of a range they're supposed to be, right? For example, these knives at the top of the tier list, at the top of the category, and at the bottom of the category, it's a range. So they could be at the bottom of D, or at the bottom of C, or at the top of D. So it could be either way you put it. Now next with the survival knife, Distinctive Blade, it has a cool, very sick rare pull animation where he flips into mid-air and catches it, and that is very sick when you get it. Now, like I mentioned, they have the same variety of skins, all right for quick switching, they're quite well, but the proportion is done decently right for all of the three of these knives, I would say. Up next is the Ursus. The only reason why the Ursus differentiated from the Survival and the Paracord going into B, I would even say, yeah, just below Classic Knife, is because it has a rare inspect animation. It has a rare inspect animation where you can loop. It is where he grabs the middle of this knife and he flips it in a circle continuously with using the four of his finger, constantly sticking it to his finger and flipping it. Each flip comes with a metallic, like a metal cling noise. That is very satisfying. And whenever I use the Ursus knife myself, I tend to stick with that animation and use it on repeat by holding the inspect button. So that is very, very cool. Up next, we have the Shadow Daggers. Shadow Daggers, I would say, is a very unique knife because you can wield it on both hands. It is the only weapon where you wield it on two hands, where you use two hands to wield them, sorry. And it has a very good looking blade. It has a good pull animation and an inspect animation. There's a lot of variety of skins on it, and it is quite well if you want a good looking knife. The reason why I say good looking is because something special to the Shadow Daggers is that the color of the skin, or the skin itself, will actually extend onto the root of the handles. So it won't just be on the blades, it will extend to the entire piece of metal of this knife. It used to have this huge issue where you pull out the Shadow Daggers, you do the thing, it actually shakes across it, which is thankfully fixed in CS2. I don't even know why they're there in the first place. Must have been a bug. It is off-putting to people though, because it has a kitchen utensil noise when you pull it out. It's like a very skimpy sound that could be off-putting to people. That is pretty much the only downside to this knife, I would say, is its noise. If it had the sound of a default knife, it would actually go into the A tier even. I'm not going to lie, I actually do like this knife a lot, especially when you can loop the inspect animation by repeatedly pressing the inspect animation reset button to just continuously flip it on the both of your hands, which is very, very sick. Now I think that's about it for the Shadow Daggers, which I don't think is a bad knife. By no means is it bad. Up next is the Skeleton Knife. Skeleton Knife, fantastic blade, fantastic rare pull animation. It does have a default pull animation, but it's just kind of lame where you just, I don't know, he just holds it out, I guess, out of his pocket or something. It has a 2 inspect animation, one being default and one being rare. The default one is just quite normal. He sticks his finger in the hole here and just sort of inspects it. Now the rare inspect animation I would mention is very amazing, where you just keep continuously spinning it on your thumb. It's sort of addicting too when you get it, because you can just keep on holding the inspect button down to loop it over and over. Very, very sick. It has a fantastic blade and very well proportioned. It's well for all occasions, great for quick switching. It has a default sound, but the pull out animation, regular pull out animation, is just so lame that when you get the rare pull animation, it's like a different knife at that point, because of how sick looking the rare pull animation is. For that reason, I'm going to put it in A, just below N9. Now it's worth mentioning that Huntsman and Flip Knife are basically the same, in the exact same spot. I would put one over the other freely, just because they are just for different reasons. You know, Flip Knife is more for like it's just up to your taste if you like a bulkier knife or a skinnier knife. These two will cover it up for you. Now up next is a Stiletto. Fantastic blade, fantastic pull animation, fantastic rare and default inspect animation, decent variety of skin, very good for quick switching, great for all occasions, very, very good proportion. However, it has a downside, which is the blade itself. Now, it is joked around often by the community as the toothpick knife because of how thin it is. It is quite the character when it comes to the blade itself, so I won't leave a comment to that, but because of the controversial properties, I'm going to put it in the middle of A. It is a fantastic knife. However, Stiletto Knife has the added benefit of a very satisfying clicky pull-out sound, where there's a additional click, like a clock ticking click noise when you pull out the knife alongside the default knife pull-out sound. So that is a great addition to the knife itself, adding more characteristics. Alright, up next is the Talon Knife. Talon Knife, it's like a budget Karambit. Great blade, great handle, great wooden finish on the handle, fantastic pull animation, rare inspect animation, and the default and inspect animation is great. Both of them are great. Huge variety of skin, great for quick switching, great for all occasions, fantastic proportion. Now there is an issue, however, which you can consider issue or not. Now, some of these A knives avoiding the issues that are avoiding them from entering S tier could just be from either an issue or a controversial thing that just stops them from entering a higher league. the controversial thing here with the Talon knife is its saw noises. It has a very distinctive noise when you pull it out, but that is in CSGO. In CS2 they fixed it somewhat by making it a lot less obvious. It was so obvious in CSGO that it somewhat tempered with my performance a little bit when I used it myself. You can hear the rattling noise when you do the rare inspect, where he's just continuously spinning on his finger, but that is, you know, it's for your personal liking. Do you like it? It'll go into S. You don't like it, it'll sit in A. Because the controversial properties, I'll put them into A. Now, being in S tier, I'll just re-explain the tiers, is absolutely perfect, flawless knife. It will never go wrong if you pick one up. Great with all skins, literally zero flaw it has. Now A is, it generally have one or two slight flaws or controversies that is keeping it away from the S tier. Or somewhat not even a flaw, but just something that is not unique enough to put them into the S tier. And B tier is solid knives, completely fine to use. However, they don't have a well-defined characteristics as some of these knives in A tier. C tier is your average bulk of knife. Great to pick up if you want to use, or if you want to start somewhere with your CSGO knife or CS2 knife journey, but always great to come back if you are bored of some of these higher tiered ones. And D is just, I don't know, they're just there. If you want to try them out once in every while, or you happen to find yourself or open one of these knives yourself even, then it's worth a shot, but they won't sit any higher than D in this situation. Now, it's worth mentioning that no knife sits in F. I don't think that any knife of CS2 actually deserve to sit in the F spot. All of the knives are great, better than default in my opinion, every single one of them, and they're worth putting in tiers above F. It is kind of weird to put F here, but I don't think any knives really belong to F. Every one of the CS knife is very old. And even some lesser defined ones are still better than a lot of these still better than the default knife. So there it is. Here is my tier list for CS2 knives. If you skip to the end, hey, it's my tier list. Like it or not is mine. If you don't like it, or if you find something controversial, or you fucking hate my opinion, make sure to leave a comment down in the comment section below to let me know how you feel about these knives, and if you agree with my opinion or not. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll be streaming irregularly, but I'll be doing a lot more CS2 content, especially more of the tier list videos. I really enjoyed this one, and thank you so much for watching. Make sure to follow me on Twitch, like the video, leave a comment, subscribe, etc, all the YouTuber bullshit. Alright, I think this is it. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye, guys. See you in the next one.